Hi, today is International Stammering Awareness Day, and we're going to attempt to answer a few questions, maybe debunk a few myths on stammering, what it is, situations, different things. So, I'm Steve.
Hello everyone, I'm Anthony, and we've both been stammering for as long as we can remember.
Right, so we'll start with
What is the difference between a stammer? Is it not the same?
I believe it's exactly the same thing. Stammer and stutter are the same thing, but I think stutter's used more in America, whereas for some reason over here we use the word stammer.
Right.
That's all I can tell you really,
Yeah.
but they are virtually the same thing.
Right.
No different. When did you start stammering?
As far as back as I can remember, I've always had a stammer. My mum always has always told me that it's always been there. There hasn't been a time when I haven't. He said that I used to speak really quite fast when I first started to talk. I try to squeeze as many words in as possible as quick as I can, and I think it just kind of led on from that point really. But as far as my memories go back, it's always been there.
For me, I think I was about maybe 8 or 9. It started to become a thing. It wasn't there before, but I remember just being aware of this thing that I couldn't figure out, couldn't say words properly now and then. And I have this memory of going up to, I think it was a teacher in school, someone had been annoying me or upset me or something had happened. And I remember having this real anxiety about going up and speaking to them. And then I remember just like trying to tell the teacher and just could not get a word out. And it was kind of, I just got this look like, well, this isn't normal, what's going on, are you alright? I've not noticed this before. And that's my first recollection of it happening, and then before I went to speech therapies. But for me, about 8 or 9, I think, when I started.
Yeah.
29 now, so it's 20 years experience. Do certain words or sounds influence stammering?
For me, yes. I very much have set words. Generally, my name. Can't say my name, my first, middle, or last name. Never have been able to. I don't know if that's because it's such an important thing, I don't know. But yeah, things like names, addresses, they tend to be the hardest. My bank card number is always an issue. But they can fluctuate. I can have easy letters, I can have easy sounds that then become difficult sounds and difficult letters, and then the ones that were difficult at one point become a lot easier to say. So.
I think I also have certain sounds in different letters now. Like one thing for me, which is I can never ever say it, is actually one of my band's names.
Right.
I play drums in a few bands, and one's called the Brian Adams Experience.
Right.
And it's obviously a tribute to Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
Brian Adams. For some reason, I don't know if that's because the whole thing's a mouthful to say or what, but that's something I always seem to struggle on, and I can't work out why.
Yeah.
Various words, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But yeah, I think for me, definitely certain words are more challenging than others. But it just depends.
I think a control thing very much influences what I can and can't say. So I'm constantly there'll be periods where I'll talk like I'm doing it now, where I'm talking really quite slowly with gaps because I'm trying to be 2 or 3 words ahead of myself. And that keeps me in control and always thinking about what I can say. I think I struggle with my name, date of birth, my addresses, words that are factual and that I can't change. I struggle with because I have no control over them.
That's kind of like last year, how this came about was last year I basically made a video to do with stammering awareness. And basically I made this video which kind of sums up what we've just talked about there in this.
I saw that video, it's fantastic.
Thank you. It's basically, if you saw the video last year, you'll know it's basically a sentence would appear at the bottom of the screen, you have to read it out loud, but except 2 or 3 words will be highlighted and you have to change those words to words with the same meaning, which is something that those two do on a daily basis. How do you feel that stammering is portrayed on TV? Whether it's Channel 4 documentaries or like films and things. This is kind of like, I've had a few people ask me, have I seen this, have I seen that, have I seen... There was that great episode of was Educating Yorkshire, where the young lads who were stammering badly, and for the majority of the programme he was speaking via a laptop to people.
Yeah.
And then I think it's his form tutor or his teacher said he'd seen the King's Speech. and there was a thing in that where he put the headphones on and he spoke fluently. So they tried that out and it worked for him, and at the end of the year I think he spoke in the whole class or the whole year group. Everyone's in tears crying, which was amazing to see him. I feel really proud for the guy, really pleased for him. But also to me, you get a lot of these documentaries where they kind of portray someone as being this person who's really struggling on this magical route to fluency, which to me, it should be more about presenting stammering as a normal thing, as a way of speaking, rather than a problem that needs fixing. I get for TV you kind of have to like create a story, make it good TV, have a happy ending thing. I get that, but it's also not presenting it as a way of speaking, as a normal thing, which I think is what this awareness day is about, really like normalising it to make it acceptable.
Yeah, I think you get a lot of documentaries of other things that is very much like a day in the life of, or a little snapshot of what it's like to live with this or what it's like to live with that. But you're right in what you're saying, in that everything I've seen about stammering always ends with the person being able to speak a lot more fluent, not just what it's like to live with a stammer on a day-to-day basis. And so I think you're right, we should shift away from just showing what it's like to eventually be able to speak fluently, because some people can't always speak fluently.
It's often just a snippet of that person's life. Yeah. It's like sometimes, you know, they can speak fluently in a context where it could be just those two sat talking in a room who could speak fluently for 10 minutes. Yeah. Personally, I'm quite relaxed here, I'm quite alright doing this for whatever reason. If this was a different situation, this is the real world, if I'm out in a pub and I'm trying to shout over people, or I'm on the phone, for example, this is a very different, you'll hear a very different version of me.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
This is just a snippet of how we sound for just this, how long this video is.
I often worry, and it's been raised since it's going to do a really disgusting plug of my podcast, or the fact that I do the Mutter and Stutter podcast.
Check it out, by the way.
Check it out, it's Mutter and Stutter podcast. But I stutter less in these environments, and I don't understand why. I don't know why. Take the camera away and have me speaking to Steve, and I'd have a lot more difficulties than what I'm having now. And people have even noticed, customers have actually come in and said to my colleagues, does he even have a stutter? Why is it called Mutter Stutter Podcast? Because he doesn't even stutter. And I don't on the podcast, and I don't know why I don't stutter on the podcast.
Another thing about, like, do you find that, like, what's your opinion on jokes with stammering? Do you think, like, jokes are, you okay with jokes with some people? You're making the joke, they're making the joke?
It's a tricky one, because I often make jokes of my own stammering to break the ice, to stop other people feeling quite uncomfortable. I think having, like what you were saying earlier on, and I kind of agree, and I do agree with you, having someone's difficulty, blocks or hesitations as a punchline really doesn't do the whole drive of awareness. Doesn't do it any favours, because I just think you're highlighting the negatives and the difficulties that person has by using stammering as a punchline, as opposed to if you fit stammering into a joke, then I think it's a little bit more light-hearted, I guess.
There was someone complaining a while ago on a stammering awareness group actually about, remember last year there was a parody by Matt Lucas on Boris Johnson, and he did like a stammering in that, but that wasn't necessarily a stammer, that was just displaying the Boris being a bag of nerves. Yeah. That isn't necessarily even as a punchline in my opinion, that's just because basically stammering isn't necessarily caused by nerves, but nerves can trigger it. Yeah. Some people do stammer because they're nervous, that doesn't mean they've got a stammer, can be a different thing. But to me, it's like, as we were saying there, if the punchline is the stammer, I don't think that's good taste. Whereas if it's used effectively, like there was an episode once I saw of Open All Hours where, I don't remember the character's name, but he was asking how to spell, I think it was potatoes, and he said something like, how many P's at the start of potato? That to me displays someone who stammers owning what they've got, not completely, just pretending it isn't there. Which I like that kind of thing. When the punchline is literally just someone stammering, that's when it becomes a bit different. Yeah. And you say we make jokes sometimes to kind of kill the anxiety. Because when you meet people, sometimes what you find is, especially if they've never met someone who stammers, you can get a bit of a look of concern from them, and you start with their anxiety, don't you? Like, they start wondering, are you okay? What's going on? And before you know it, you start worrying how they're feeling, and I found just if we make a little joke about that to them, it kills their anxiety, it kills my anxiety about them. Yeah. And it makes the whole situation easy. You just play like a stammer, just give me a second.
Quite often people ask me if I'm okay, if I need any help. Are you alright, pal? Yeah, I'm absolutely fine.
It's worse when you're in a club and someone just thinks you're hammered, and it's like, you're drunk all the time. It's not the case.
Mine gets better when I'm drunk for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe just their anxieties. The anxiety about it potentially happening goes out the window. My inhibitions go because I'm drunk, and it's probably the last thing that I'm worried about. So
see, for me it's kind of strange because I find if I have a couple of pints, I get a bit worse.
Right.
And after that, I seem to get better when I'm drunk. Maybe I just stop caring and that bit goes.
Yeah.
But for me, normally it's like 1 or 2 beers, I can't relax. I get really tensed up and I can't get a word out.
So just drinking a lot help you eventually then?
Eventually, yeah. This isn't a healthy...
I used to work in care. I was a manager in care. I used to manage the outreach service before I come back to barbering, and I remember ringing a care manager, a community nurse, like a care manager, about one of the guys we used to work with, and I'm terrible on the phone anyway, like probably most people who have a stammer, and her initial reaction was, are you ringing to speak to one of your social worker? And she just assumed, because I had this difficulty trying to speak to her, that I must have been someone who had some kind of learning disability or difficulty, and I was trying to get in touch with my own care manager. And I was like, I was that angry with a response that it just all came out absolutely fine then. Like,
that's weird how a mood can trigger it.
Absolutely.
And the same things like a few weeks ago in Starbucks. I'd been to see my girlfriend and we were going back from Edinburgh. Went into Starbucks. This is when I walked out with a different order to what I originally asked for. I could barely get a word out. And when he said how much it was, I pulled a bunch of change out of my pocket. He asked me, can't you change for you?
Did you think you couldn't do it?
Yeah, I must have thought it was something beyond the stammer.
Did people ask you if you want to write it down?
Yeah, I get that.
I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah, write it down rather than that.
Do you want to write it down? No, just be patient.
Just give me a minute.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Yeah, I can write it down. But, however, when it comes to the phone, that was the hard thing for me because it was, as you know yourself, the phone. Anyone's stamps will tell you one of the worst things, or can be one of the worst things. For me, because like people think you have bad reception. That's the worst one. You're breaking up. Like I'm not. I actually sound like this.
I paid for a skip once, so I tried to pay for a skip once over the phone, and by the time I'd finished saying the 16-digit number, the card machine had timed out, and I didn't even know card machines time out. It was like, mate, I'm really sorry, but the card machine's timed out, you're going to have to try to say that again. I was like, oh God, this is annoying. So that probably leads on to, is it something you can grow out of? I don't know of anyone, I don't know if you know of anyone that's grown out of it. I think you'll learn to manage it better the older you get. Mine has got better the older that I've got, and I don't know if that's because I've finally found techniques that allow me to say the words off. It's just because I've stopped worrying so much about what people think. Or
like acceptance almost.
Acceptance, yeah, absolutely, because it isn't going to go anywhere, I don't think.
Yeah, it's like people ask you, is there a cure for it? And this also ties to another question where someone asked, is it something you can get rid of, or is it something you might learn to live with? And I've heard of people growing out of it when if you stand for an early age, sometimes people will grow out of it. I started around about the age people normally tend to grow out of it, but I think if you don't grow out of it, it's something you can have to learn to live with. And that's a lot easier said than done. People, it does get frustrating, it does frustrate people, and it's not like, it's not the easiest thing to live with sometimes, but it's more about accepting it and learning to live with it, learning to, how to be with it, how to control it. Which is why I think speech therapy is helpful. They're not necessarily a cure, but they're definitely going to help control your speech and give you more confidence in that sense. So as anyone stammering, I would suggest doing speech therapy. A common question I get asked is, what kind of advice, what would I give to like a parent who's maybe noticed that the child started stammering, or you know, or they have a friend who's stammering? What advice would I give to a parent? Personally, I would say just basically maybe just encourage them. Don't treat it out, acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Don't treat it as a problem. The more you try and treat it out and treat it as a problem, which we talked about with TV before, but the more you treat it as a problem, I think the worse it can feel. Whereas when it just becomes a normal thing, it becomes less sort of embarrassment about it.
Yeah, yeah,
less
absolutely.
just.
I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but I think my mum always felt that it was something that she'd done that always caused mine, and no matter how many times a speech therapist said to her, Jen, it's not what you've done, like you haven't done anything, it's been there since he was being able to talk, so he was probably always going to be there. She's never really been able to get to shift that mindset that she was the reason it happened, and that my advice to parents would be, you know, don't beat yourself up about it. My brother, his little girl, she went through a period of stammering, and he was saying he would look for a bit of advice, and I was like, just let it be, because if this is to continue for the rest of her life, she needs to know that it's not a drama, and you don't need to be trying to pin a reason for it, because pinning reasons on stammering will give a trigger for worse days or almost. So just don't feel bad on yourself as a parent. Don't feel bad about it, because it's nothing that you've influenced, you know. And there will be parents out there that think that they've done something that's caused that. Tell them it's not a big deal. It really isn't.
Hence why this awareness day is so important.
Absolutely.
Not just awareness, as you were saying, I think it's more also about acceptance.
Yeah.
Accepting people do stammer. You know, accepting that it is a thing, you know, it's not a problem, it's just a thing, it exists, and it shouldn't be treated as a problem, or I don't think people should be shy about it. How can you help someone who stammers? A common thing people do, I find, when I'm stammering, is people often try and finish words or sentences. In my opinion, it's a bit of a personal thing, like everyone's a bit different with this, we're a bit different with this. I think odd words can be okay, but that depends if you know the person. When they try and finish a sentence for you, that's just the worst you can do, because it creates this anxiety, more often than not that they're saying the wrong things than what you're trying to say, and it just creates this mess of anxiety, and you can't, that can be a nightmare. But my opinion, odd words are okay, but kind of wait till you know the person.
I prefer help. I prefer people to assist me. There's never been a stranger. Like you said, I do think it's a personal thing, and I think you should at least know the person. The difficulty I have is I have very long periods of fluent speech, and then I can have a block or a hesitation on a word, and I've known me to go 10 minutes, at least 10-15 minutes of trying to say a word, and in that 10-15 minutes I've become quite breathless, because that's what happens. It starts playing over in my mind over and over again. It becomes more than just being about saying a word. I start worrying about how the person feels. Are they feeling uncomfortable? Their discomfort raises my anxiety levels more than the difficulty of saying the word does. And as soon as my anxiety levels are raised, just talking in general becomes a major issue.
And that's to handle that properly is to meet somebody who looks like they're struggling. I don't think there's any harm asking, so do you want any help with the words, or would you rather just finish yourself? Yeah. There's no harm at all in saying that to someone, because that helps you understand them better.
Quite often the break helps me as well. If someone says, do you want me to help? I'll say, oh no, I'm alright, and then the word comes out.
Yeah, I find that.
But once I'm at block point, there's nothing's coming out for me. So sometimes.
Do you find that's the one word that you're blocked on? But if I ask you so many other times, oh, it's 9 o'clock, then that block's gone.
Yes,
and then it's kind of.
I certainly think not breaking eye contact, and I know I can really imagine it's so uncomfortable for someone who doesn't stammer, sitting there looking at someone who's pulling really strange faces, funny faces, or dipping their ear to the shoulder like I do to say words, or the nodding of the head that Steve does. I can imagine it is really uncomfortable at first, but it helps me no end if someone just keeps watching me, if they're looking at me, but when they're fidgeting, heads down, going for a cup of tea, or walking away, sweeping, or they're doing something, I automatically think they've switched off, or they're really not interested, and then it just makes things a little bit harder. Agree with that?
I think the sort of aim of this video is to promote stammering awareness. This is more aimed at people who don't stammer than who do stammer.
Yeah.
So therefore, if this helps you, if you've learned something from this, great. That will hopefully make someone who stammers life a little bit easier if you have to meet them. Make you a little bit more prepared in what to do if you meet someone, how to handle the situation. So yeah, I do hope this has been informative, and yes.
We'll see you for another video next year.
Will we?
You have to come on the podcast.
Yeah, give me a shout, we'll do that sometime.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for watching, thank you very much for watching.
Cheers guys.
And have a great day.
Yeah, great stuff.